Hi, I am Martha Jane Bonkemeyer, and you are listening to the Richard Petty Motorsports Podcast. Hope I got it right.
That's perfect.
Yes.
Awesome.
Y'all can tell I'm not real bashful about some things.
Hey, Petty fans. Welcome to episode 12 of the Richard Petty Motorsports Podcast, presented by Petty's Garage.
Presented by Petty's Garage. I'm rocking one of these Columbia shirts with the Petty's Garage logo on it today. Yeah.
If I'm going to be on game.
If I'm going to be on camera, I got to have a little bit of swag.
Yeah, I like it. Looking good. So we've got a really special episode today. We kind of I think we did tell everybody who was going to be on this week, but we've got Martha Jane Bonkemeyer, who served as executive assistant to Richard Petty she did a couple stints here, right? It was first in the
69 to 70, and then
came back in 86 through 2004.
Yeah.
So she's seen a lot in her time here at both Petty Engineering. She made sure to correct me on that because when she first got here, it wasn't Petty Enterprises. And then when she came back, it was Petty Enterprises, and she was a huge part of what went on here in this building when it was, running like a full-on race shop.
Yeah. So, let's hop right into it.
Here's Martha Jane.
My name is Martha Jane Bonkemeyer, and I was born in Randleman, and I have always lived in Randleman. But now when I went to school, we called it Randleman, So, but anyway, my position when I came to work in 69, and Miss Petty asked me to come to work for, was Petty Engineering at that time. And we was just a secretary, You wasn't any kind of assistant or any big name. You just was a secretary. I was working at a bank in Randleman, and I'll never forget the day that she come in and she said, "We're going to go on time cards," and said, "I don't want to do time cards." And she leaned over the counter at the bank and she said, "Will you come to work for me?"
That was it?
That was it.
Wow.
Goodness
So that was 69.
Wow.
And I came to work for her, did the time cards, and she had a bookkeeping system that was what you took in, what you spent out, and what you had left over. And so at that time, their accountant started them on double entry bookkeeping. And I had gone to accounting school in Asheboro Commercial College.
Oh, Lord.
ACC.
Yeah, it was a one-year course, and I got a junior accounting degree, so I did know how to add and subtract. So
checked all the boxes.
All the boxes. Yep. Well, I started out the podcast with Dale Inman by saying this, and you're the next one. There's 2 Randleman Tigers in this room right now.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Bradley's from Virginia.
That's not unfortunate, but but one day I'll get somebody from my hometown, have my dad on or something, and be able to say the same thing.
Well, you remember when they won those 3 championships for the football team?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And my oldest daughter, was a cheerleader at that time, and Richard's daughter, Lisa, was a cheerleader at that time. We went to all those ball games during that time.
And you were a cheerleader too when you were in school.
You're going way back now. Yes, Linda Gale, that's what I always call Richard's wife. We grew up together, and yes, we were cheerleaders together, went to school together, went to church together. And so we knew Richard and his mother and daddy and Maurice before I came to work for him, because we would go to the races with him even before Richard started racing.
Oh, wow.
And so we go back before he was my boss man. He was a friend. But, Linda and I were good friends, and had a good time together. And we'd go to the ball games together or go to the races together. And they'd come to our house and eat hot dogs. And
Richard loves hot dogs. I know that.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
So you mentioned Miss Petty hired you. That's Richard's mother, correct?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I always called, I never called her Elizabeth. I always called her Mrs. Petty, and Lee was Mr. Petty. So when you came to work for him, you didn't just come to work for one person. You came to work for a family.
Right.
And so you really never knew exactly who you were supposed to answer to. But I always answered to Mr. and Miss Petty.
Right.
So
I got you. I have a request. So we've told a lot of folks that worked here back in the late 90s, early 2000s that knew you well, that you're going to come on the podcast with us, and they were very excited, and all of them said the same thing, is that when I think of Martha Jane, I think of her coming over the PA saying, "Attention employees, could you give us a good attention employees?"
Well, one of the first times that we had the more modern phone system, it did have a PA system sort of thing that you could do an announcement. And before that, you just had to go around, and whoever you wanted to come to the office, you'd have to just go get them, bring them to the office or whatever. So when we finally got that, it was just a wonderful way that I didn't have to go walk out into the garage and say, well, some Dale, will you come to the office or whoever. So I would say, attention employees, will Dale Emmon please come to the office? And he'd be right up there.
Yes. I'm so happy.
All right, podcast made. Dale swung by. Me and Bradley were in there. We had our social media team in the office talking yesterday about this and what we were going to be doing. And Dale walks in. It's always a pleasure when Dale shows up at your office, turns the light off, turns it back on. And we told him we were going to have you on, and he said, "Ask her if she's got her sticky notes."
Yeah.
So what are the sticky notes? What's that about?
Goodness. The little yellow sticky notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, back when I came to work in '69, of course, you didn't have computers. You didn't have ways of saving information. It took forever for Richard to finally decide that he would buy us a word processor for the office. Y'all don't even know what that is. So we had the yellow sticky notes. And of course, I kept a folder with when anybody would call and would want to ask him something, because when somebody would call the office, I was the only secretary they had back then. So, the phone calls would come through me. Well, of course, I didn't have all that great a memory, and I would have a pad that I would write down everything that I needed to ask him when he finally got in. He was a late sleeper. So when he finally got in, I would go over the phone calls or any information that we needed. And I used the yellow sticky notes, which you call them post notes now, I guess.
Yeah.
And I would have a lot of them on the desk, and I would line them up to what was the most important that we needed to look at first. So, Dale remembered those sticky notes.
There's some people that work here now that need to adopt that system.
Well, if you write it down and you have it in front of you, you can remember it better, or I can.
It still holds true today. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
100%.
Yep. So at what point did you kind of transition from being a secretary with petty engineering in the 60s to being Richard's more so assistant?
Well, things changed with my career because I had a second child after 8 years having the first child. We are so thankful for that child. I'll have to say it wasn't planned, and she came along in '70. So I only worked, 2 full years when Miss Petty asked me to come to work. But I still did part-time stuff because I did Mr. and Miss Petty's bookkeeping for them. They owned some warehouses over in Charlotte that he rented, and so I still would come back in just maybe a couple of days a month and do that. Well, the girl that I trained when I left in '70, because I stayed home with my second child, Brenda Williams, and she was a cousin of Richard's, so she worked up until '86 full-time for Richard. And then she left in '86, so I came back full-time in '86. I'll never forget the day that Linda Gale called me, and she said, "Brenda's going to leave." Said, "Would you come back and work for Richard full-time now?" And I said, "Well, you ask him if he really wants me to, because I wasn't so sure he wanted me to come back full-time. He'd had me 2 years, and so, you don't know if you want to really be there. But anyway, I came back in '86. So by that time, yes, you had sponsors. and it had changed a lot. In fact, I was going through some of the old stuff and helping Rebecca and them clean out, and we found the first contract with Chrysler that Lee had signed.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was in 60, I might have the date wrong, 67, somewhere along in there. And it was just a typed up sheet, you know. So, yes, by the time I come back, so STP and all of them were getting in as sponsors. So you had more people that Richard and the race team had to answer to.
Right.
That, you know, expected so much out of the team. It wasn't just the family that was building the race car up there in the shed that Mr. Petty had.
Right.
And so that had certainly changed a lot.
Gotcha.
So there's a big difference between when you left in 1970, which was right before we signed with STP, and then you come back in 86.
Full time.
Big difference.
Big difference,
Yeah.
yeah. And by that time, there was more employees, of course, and by that time, they had hired some more people for accounting in the office there, and I only took care of Richard's schedule, his correspondent, his appearances, and the things that he had to do. So I wasn't doing the bookkeeping at that time.
Yeah. So you talked about his appearances and correspondence. Back in those days, you know, Richard quite often was meeting and mingling with some pretty big name people. You know, presidents, Queen of England, maybe. You know, do you remember any of the setting that kind of stuff up and talking to some pretty high level people to, you know, meet the king?
I did, because still it didn't change that much. When they called Petty Enterprises and wanted to speak to Richard Petty, they had to go through Martha Jane first.
Right.
So, you know, we'd write down on those sticky notes, you know, who has called you. I would go over it with him, and then he would decide, you know, if that's something he wanted to do, if it's something he felt like he had to do, you know. Yes, you know, he's been around the world, of course, and met some very important people. I felt very fortunate by having a job here because of that I met other people myself that I would have never had an opportunity to meet, and that was a plus for working for somebody that is so well known as he was.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was quite interesting. I can't right off the top of my head think of, you know, anybody that particularly would be in mind. He was very fortunate to meet several of the presidents. And when they started to build the camp, Paul Newman came here. So I was impressed that I got to meet Paul Newman.
That's a good one.
Oh,
Yeah. You know, he came here when they were first looking at the site, and we had the offices where they're at now. And this man walked in jeans and a jean jacket, and he said, "Hi, I'm Paul Newman."
Oh, man.
And Martha Jane said, "Well, hey, I'm Martha Jane." He didn't know who Martha Jane was, so, you know. But
he didn't know the status level of who he was talking to, is what it sounds like.
I don't know about that, but yeah, he was just very down to earth, and it was just excellent that he came, I thought, and looked over the site of what has turned out to be such a wonderful, successful project.
Definitely. That's pretty cool. So what was a typical day like? I mean, obviously answering phones, taking down notes on sticky notes, but I mean, talk more about like having to wrangle Richard and keep track of him and, you know, make sure he's getting where he needs to go.
Well, you know, a lot of jobs that you go to, your week, I guess, would be the same, and you look forward to Monday through Friday, and they say Friday's a good day, you know. But our Mondays were not always good, because whatever happened on Sunday depended on what kind of mood everybody was in on Monday.
Right.
So, you know, if you had a good day at the racetrack, that was great. If you'd have a great Monday. He was an easy person to work for, because a lot of times when he was asked to do appearances and go somewhere, you know, he's the one that made up his mind whether or not he wanted to do that.
Right.
And then it wasn't hard back then. he had a private plane that he would fly, and so it was just a matter of somebody taking him to the airport. I never went on any of the public appearances or anything like that. They did that once they started the marketing department here, and I don't remember the date that they moved the marketing department from Charlotte to here before he moved the race team. So it was not that hard with having a private plane that he could go. And then, of course, after a few years, we had 2 girls that came in, and they did just the travel. So you'd work with them and to make sure that everything was right and on his card. You know, he had those little index cards.
Yeah. Explain to the people listening, what those cards are like and how you have to build them for him.
Well, Jody told you a while ago when I first come here, we had just a typewriter that had correction tape, and it, took them a long time to ever get a word processor, and then we finally put it on a computer. But when he first did the cards, one day he said, we typed him up a little sheet a lot of times, and he said, I need something that will just fit in my billfold. So we used index cards. So we would type his whole schedule, and most of the time it would be just going to the races back in the early days, because a lot of times he'd just have, appointments here, and his appearances would be at the racetrack. And so we used the index card and would type every single item that he needed to know. Who was going to pick him up, who he would be seeing, what appearance he would be making, and then, that was still when he was racing also. So, he knew, when practice was supposed to be, but I put all of that on the index card. I won't ever forget one time when, this was after Brian and Rebecca was married. Brian had one of the blackberries, and so he come in and he said, Brian did, he said, do you have any batteries for the blackberry? He said, mine's run down. And Richard was sitting there, and he whipped them index cards out, and he said, my index card don't need a battery, and they're always what you need. He said, you don't have to have a battery for those. So, he still went by the index cards. Now, I don't know if Jody types those up and he has them still now. I
think
or
so.
Not.
Yeah.
Really? But she does them on the computer.
I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, that was how he just started out. And then another thing he thought about that it was just great, when he would look at our calendar, I would have just a desk calendar, and we'd write down everything, and we still have those. We found those when we were cleaning out some stuff. It was just, one of the black calendars that you use. Well, he said, I'd like to see what I have that's in the future. So if you go in his office there, you'll see that big calendar that's the whole year. So we had somebody to print that out, had to take it to Greensboro to get it printed out that big, that he could look at what he was doing in January, and still if he was doing something in September, he could look that far ahead. So he's a very creative person. Definitely. Richard was.
So tell the people at home that have never been in that office back there, that big calendar on the wall, how is it different than most other calendars?
Well, does anybody else have that large a calendar in their office? I've never been in anybody else's office. So
what day does it start?
Oh, it starts in January and goes all the way through December.
The day.
The day.
It starts on.
Oh, it starts on Monday and ends on Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you mean.
Yeah, most people's calendars start on Sunday.
Right. Well, his week ended with the race. It didn't matter what come up in the first of the week. His week would end with the race. You've heard him say that all he ever wanted to do was just race a race car. I know everybody's heard him say that. He didn't care about all the fame. He didn't, he handled it so well. When we first started going to the races with him, my husband and Linda Gale and I, and he started racing, we were always, most of the time, a lot of times we'd ride with them and to a local race. And we were always the last one to leave because he never refused anybody a signature on whatever they wanted signed. If a woman come up and she wanted it signed up here on her shoulder, on her T-shirt, or somewhere else, you know, you had to be careful where you signed those body parts.
Yeah.
But you know, he never refused, and that I think is one of the most important things about Richard, that he was always so gracious to everyone, not only the public but to his employees also.
Mm-hmm.
I know y'all asked about the year 1992 before we started this.
Yes.
So
that was a big year, right?
We'll get to that when you want to.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about kind of, you know, did you have a role with corresponding with fans? You know, did you get fan mail and answer that?
Yes, at first, see, they always would send it here to the garage, and he never let a letter go by that was never answered. And then when they formed the fan club, and I don't remember what year they did that, a lot of his fan mail would be sent to the fan club. And
Okay.
Linda Ritchie is the president or over the fan club, and I'm sure she handled the same way. And then they started with send in things that would be bought, you know, like the little metal cars,
Mm-hmm.
and he would sign those. Now, Sharon, his daughter, takes care of that now at the museum, and they do a fantastic job with that. In fact, Sharon told me here just a while back during the virus and all that they had as much mail as they had at any time because, you know, I guess people staying at
Right.
home would be able to send in the postcards or whatever they had. So he's always been very aware of what fans have meant to him.
Yeah, I was back there. I had to grab Jody for something, and they were back in that area where he signed stuff. And I walked in, and it was written on yellow paper, and it was somebody's letter to him, and he was sitting there reading it, and I was sitting there talking to Jody and Sharon, and he probably sat there for 2 or 3 minutes reading through every word of that letter, and I just thought that was the coolest thing.
It's incredible, yeah.
I don't think that has changed about him since he started racing the first time that, like I said, that we went years and years ago up to this day. He's still so aware of what the sport needs the fans, and it's been terrible that they haven't been able to go to the racetrack this year. But I think that's just one of the highlights of his career.
Yeah, for sure. Sharon was telling us, we asked her about kind of odd items that maybe get sent in to be signed. She said recently, I think there was a fishing lure that came in that Richard signed and sent back. And then Richard said that one of the weirdest things he's ever had to sign, like at a racetrack or in person, I don't know where it was at, but he said it was a live duck.
Well,
I'm curious if you remember anything strange or odd or different being sent here for Richard to sign or a gift.
oh my gosh, I didn't think about a question like that, you know, a live duck. Oh, no, I can't off the top of my head think of something very odd, you know, that they used to, you know, and still do cut up the race cars, and he would always sign those things, but can't remember of anything, you know, that stands out about that.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that kind of a weird cycle of life? You know, you build the race car, it goes out on the track, something might happen, or you, for whatever reason, you cut it up and sell the pieces, and they come back when it gets signed.
I do remember when he wrecked at Daytona that time, and it turned over end over end, and they brought that car back. That I was working here then, and a man in South Carolina bought the whole car that was left. Now, what he did with that, I don't recall. He kept it, I know himself, but I don't know if Richard got it back or not. He may have over the years, but somebody wanted that whole car.
We got to figure out what happened to that.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you're the one that bought that car,
Tell us.
let us know. We want to know what happened to it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I like to just see it.
Yeah.
Because we've got his final car that he drove in '92 at Atlanta. We've got that here in the Petty Museum. So that's another one of those cars that would be cool to see, the one from Daytona.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the year 1992 then. Crazy year, wasn't it?
I don't know how we all lived through it, but we
Wow.
did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the first place, when he finally made his announcement, and he had a group of people that helped him with his fan appreciation tour. That's what it was called. And they did, of course, so many souvenirs. But Keith Fair was the person that was in charge of handling the fan appreciation. It wasn't just the fact that Richard said, "Oh, I'm going to retire and that's it." There again, you notice that first word in that year was fan.
Right.
Fan appreciation. And that's what he showed, I think, for all the years that he had raced, and how lucky he was that he could still be here and do a fan appreciation tour. And of course they did something at every single racetrack. Well, I don't know how the man wasn't just completely wore out,
Right.
you know, from that year, but he sleeps late, so that might help a lot. But anyway, they did so many souvenirs, and he wanted to do something for the employees too. So we had baskets in the office there in cabinets. They were white, just metal baskets, and there was about 49 to 52, I think, employees that had been here for a long time. And we took a number. My number happened to be 27 because that was the date that that little second child was born.
Mm-hmm.
So we all took a number. Of course, he got the first 5, Richard did, because of for himself and his 4 children. And every souvenir that was made, each employee got one of those souvenirs, and we'd put it in the basket when things would come.
Oh, okay.
And it would, if it had a number on it, you'd get your number. You know, like the number 27 went in my basket, and it had everybody's name on it. And when it come in, I'd put the stuff in the basket, even down to the smallest pack of souvenir cards.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody got one of what was made, like, you know, the guns that was made, we got those.
Wow.
That would have been cool.
The imitation championship ring, I have
Oh
one
my
of that
gosh.
in my collection.
So do you still have a lot of this stuff now?
Oh yes, I have never sold any of his items at all. It was a gift to me, and I cherished it. Now I don't know what my children might do with it. I have 2 girls, and you know, I think maybe, you know, if I'm not here, maybe they would give it back to the camp and use it for auctions and all, something that would benefit other people. But that was such an interesting year that, you know, they did the food line cards, that every race that you had, you could go into food line and buy these pack of cards that would have each race on it. I just cannot tell you the number of items that was put in those baskets, because during the year we would have to clean them out and send them home, you know, with the employees.
Oh, yeah.
But I always thought that was one of the, again, most gracious things that he did. And like I say, wore him out that year, but, you know, he was still thinking of other people when he was ready to retire. So.
Wow. I didn't know the story about the baskets and all, and I knew there were a lot of souvenirs that went along with it, but
I'd never heard that before.
yeah, if you were here in '92, that would have been pretty cool to take home for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. And a lot of the employees that were here in '92 had been here for a good while, you know, same ones. And but one of the most treasured, I think, was the well, I don't know. The bobblehead was pretty cute too. So, you know, that ring was really nice, and you had to have the people's ring size. You had to have the people's, you know, jersey size. So, you know, we kept up with every size of an item that people had. There's still a folder in the office in there that has the people's numbers on it, because Jody, or the girl that came after me, they have not thrown away my paper files. thank goodness, because we've had to go back and look at some stuff. Jody every once in a while will call me and she'll say, do you know such and such about such and such? And I'll say, well, go in there to the files and it's listed under, whatever. and
so
I
you
had
still remember a lot of that stuff then?
Yeah, and I had a different way of filing because it was all paper. It's not on computer, because, if his motorcycle needed working on, it wasn't under the garage name. It would be filed under motorcycle. And we had a Rolodex the same way. If it was his boots, it would be filed under the name Boots, where he had to repair, not the name of the company. I just sort of had my own filing system.
So you had a Rolodex that was like boots, hat, sunglasses, button-up shirts, belt buckles.
Yes, they've still got that old Rolodex too, because it's in the drawer in there. And every once in a while, Jody or one of the other secretaries just call and say, do you remember such and such? And I'll say, well, go look under, and we'll do the subject matter too.
It sounds like you saved a lot of people some headache in the future from the work that you put in.
I don't know about that. We just had our own way of doing things, and whether it worked or not, it did work for a while, because I retired in 2004.
Okay.
It was time when they wanted to do a website, and they wanted to do more social media, and I knew Martha Jane I did not want to learn that. No.
And look, now you got, guys like us doing this podcast.
I know.
Come so far.
When Jody asked, when she called me and asked me would I do the podcast, I said, Jody, what's that?
In podcasts, we to help pay for this, we have to go to a break in the middle of it. So we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we're going to come right back.
Oh, okay. Good for commercials. We need those.
Yes, definitely.
Welcome to Petty's Garage. Every one of our strut bars and coil covers are handmade right here in my hometown, Level Cross, North Carolina. Now, you probably know my favorite color, but we still make these things in every color you can imagine. You've got the power to make your car go and show exactly how you want. Visit Petty's-Garage.com to check out all the parts, engines, and tunings we've got to offer.
So we just clicked record, and Bradley just asked, is there anything in particular you want to talk about?
Yeah, any like really favorite special memories from your time here that stand out?
Well, I have such good memories of Linda Gale, because we were such, good friends and knew each other, then. And you felt like, too, that even though you worked for Richard, and I tried to keep it on a business level, with him, there were some things that maybe I didn't need to tell Linda Gale, that happened, with sponsors or stuff like that. But, you felt like you were in a family, and Mr. and Miss Petty always made me feel a part of their family. And when I started working for them, but then again with working with Richard and Linda too, there were some things you needed to be sure that you satisfied Linda Gale with. He had to go home to her at the end of the day,
right? And
if she wasn't happy, it didn't make him happy. So there were some times when his schedule got so heavy, and she'd, say to me, well, is he ever going to get to stay home anymore, and that kind of thing. So I remember those times that sometimes it was hard to be able to please both of them, and with her being such a good friend, and he was her husband, and you wanted them to stay happy too. So it was a different kind of situation that maybe other people didn't have in their job, being a friend first and then a boss man second.
Yeah, that's got to probably put you in a tough spot sometimes, because most people just have their working relationship with one side of the marriage, and don't have to worry about the other side. But
that's true. And then we always claimed Kyle as our first child, because my husband and I were married 4 years before we had a child. And, of course, Linda and Richard had him shortly after they were married and all. And a lot of times he would stay with us when she didn't want to take him to the races. So we called him our first child. And still, I love Kyle. And I love all three of her children. And then when I had my second child, she had Rebecca shortly after that. And Rebecca would stay with us a lot of times, so I felt like I had a part in raising at least two of their children. And then Lisa stayed with us too. She was my age of my first child. You know, poor Sharon got left out, but Sharon never wanted to stay away from home. Sharon was a home person. So I felt really lucky by having a relationship with his children, where, you know, a lot of times, like you say, you have a boss man, you work for him 8-10 hours a day, and you go home and you don't have that personal relationship. So I think if anything that would stand out with the job that I had, it was that I loved their children. Now, you know, and that's a different relationship that people just don't get to have, and I still do love them. Of course. And
it probably takes a lot of trust on their end to trust you to be there and to essentially help raise them too. So I mean,
I hope so. I won't forget one time when, and this is sort of personal, but one time when they had gone to a race, and my youngest daughter had her driver's license, and she stayed at the house with Rebecca, and they had an older girl that would babysit. Well, they wanted to go to town, and they were not really supposed to leave. And so my daughter, her name is Linda Lee, she drove Rebecca to town. I raked her over the coals. I said, what if somebody kidnapped Rebecca while y'all were gone to town, and Linda and Richard are gone to the race? And I'm supposed to really be responsible too, you know. So I really give her a hard time that she would take Rebecca to town without telling me, you know. So.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it sounds like there were a lot of responsibilities that you had or took on beyond just the schedule and keeping track of Richard on a business level. You know, I'm sure you probably had to take somebody to a baseball practice or a doctor's appointment. I'm sure those things had to happen here and there.
Did some of those things, and Miss Petty, I would take her after she was at the assistant living. After Mr. Petty passed away, she just didn't want to stay at the house here alone. There were some situations where she heard some noises and thought some people, you know, around the house. So she chose to go to assistant living, was just 2 miles from my house. There wasn't a week that went by that I didn't go see her.
Oh, wow.
And I would take her to the hairdresser. If she needed a doctor's appointment, I would take her there. So, you know, I still felt like I had that personal relationship with her, and with Mr. Petty too. He trusted me with his money, and so, you know, if he trusted me keeping up with his money, I felt like, boy, I've made it, you know. And he was so funny. Every month he would come in, and I had to have him a list of how much money he had taken in that month, and how much he had spent, and he'd say, do I have any money left? Well, of course he had money left, you know. And every month he'd say, let me see my sheet to see if I've got any money. And I'd say, Mr. Petty, you have money. Do you need to have any money right now, you know? And so he was funny about that. And there was hardly a day go by that he didn't walk through the garage, and then he'd come, you know, through my office and sit down, and we'd have some really good conversations. I love them both dearly.
Yeah, it's probably going to be hard to find somebody outside the family, although I don't think saying that you're outside the family is accurate. You're probably as close to being inside as somebody could get that know Richard on such a personal level as you do. And that's why I wanted to have you on and talk about this kind of stuff.
Well, when they asked me, when Rebecca called and said that, you know, I said, well, I won't tell any secrets that I wasn't supposed to tell on him, you know. No, he was an outstanding man. There was no secrets that anybody needed to know. So.
Are there any challenges? Now, we won't tell any secrets, but are there any challenges of working with the king?
I remember one time, and this was when I had come back, and there was a question I asked him, and he didn't answer me right off, and he got up and walked out of the office, and I said, wait, I need an answer right now, and I pointed my finger at him. I said, wait, no. I need the answer right now. I mean, I don't even remember what the question was or whether it was appearance or what. And I said, I need that answer right now. And he turned around to me and he said, don't ever point your finger at me again. And I didn't, So I knew that you just had to be patient. He's a patient man too, but he could run out of his patience at times when there was so much that was piling on him and people pulling him in different directions as sponsor, car owner, still walking through the garage and checking to see how the car was being built because, he put his life in that car every time he got in it. And so there was times that he would get pulled in so many directions that you wondered how in the world he handled all of it. And I tried to be as much of a help as I possibly could, but I didn't ever point my finger at him again.
Yeah. Richard's known for taking that big long finger of his and
crooked finger. That's what that was. Is the crooked finger because it doesn't really go straight.
No, it wasn't straight that day either. But it was pointing at me, so I didn't let him do that again. Yeah. And do you remember the Petty Story movie? Do y'all remember that?
Yeah. 43. I think it's on YouTube for anybody that wants to watch it.
Oh, is it?
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was after I had quit in 70, But when they made the movie, they called and they said they needed somebody to look after costumes. And so I did that for the movie.
Oh, wow.
That was very interesting. Did
you get credit as the costume designer in the movie?
No, well, we bought costumes. I didn't have to design anything.
Okay.
But the girl that played Miss Petty, I took her to the old Belks in Greensboro, and we bought dresses there. Lord, I can't remember what her name was. I know Darren McGavin played, Mr. Petty. And that was so interesting because I was on the set each day too, and whatever costume they needed for the next set or whatever, I was responsible for getting that ready and all. Had to find a babysitter for that little girl, but I did. So, but that was very interesting, and that's something that a person wouldn't ordinarily get to do on a job. And even though I wasn't working for him at that time, whoever was in charge said, well, we need somebody, to help us out with that. So they called and asked if I would do that. So that was interesting.
That's awesome.
Just add it to the list, right?
Yeah. Wear a lot of hats.
Personal assistant, bookkeeper, babysitter, costume designer. I mean.
Well, I'm not moving to Hollywood now, okay? Not moving out of Randleman. Not going to do that. No.
I wouldn't either.
Well, let me tell you one thing about my husband, if you don't care.
Oh, please.
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
His name's Willis Bonkemeyer, and his career was with Lowe's Hardware all of his life. He went to work for him in Ashburn in 57 when they only had 4 stores. And he worked for Lowe's for 26 years. Now, he likes to tell that too, but I will tell that. But he retired early at age 48, and so when it come time for some sponsors, Lowe's had asked Willis if they would ask Richard, because they knew that he knew, because Richard, and their office was in North Wilkesboro at that time. And they asked him, would maybe Richard come up and talk to him about being a sponsor for their lawnmower. Well, Willis took Richard to North Wilkesboro, and sure enough, they got Richard to sponsor their lawnmower, and it was the Richard Petty lawnmower. Now, there's a man in Philadelphia that has found a lot of these old lawnmowers and restored them.
Oh my gosh.
Jay Phillips is his name, and he would bring them down here and have Richard sign them. But that's another story.
Were they petty blue lawnmowers?
Yes, they were.
Had to be,
They were
yes.
patty blue, had number 43 on the side of them, and had Richard's name on them. So that's quite an antique, and
Wow.
I'm sure
Oh,
worth
wow.
some money. But in the meantime, whenever they went, they asked Richard, would he like to have either Lowe's stock or $5,000 for the sponsor. Remember that exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He said no, he'd take the money. They were going to be building their house and all. Well, we kid him every once in a while because since that time, I think the stock has split about 7 times, and he might have had more than $5,000.
Might have, yeah.
If he'd have kept the stock.
Mhm.
So, you know.
I think Lowe's was successful, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I believe it's like my husband kept his stock, so I'm not going to tell you any more about that.
Oh,
But we pick at Richard every once in a while and say, you know, your lawnmower wore out and you spent your money, but you might have had the Lowe's stock if you'd have just listened to Willis. So.
oh man, what a great story.
That's awesome. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
man.
we did pick at him about that, but that's okay. He's got other things that people have given him, and he's had for sponsors, so he's not hurt. He's all right.
Yeah.
He's all right.
Live duck lawnmower.
Yeah,
Well, he probably signed multiple lawnmowers, I
Yeah.
would think.
yeah.
Bet you they were fast.
We've got
too.
we got to see if this guy's got like an Instagram page,
Yeah.
you know, that he just like documents restoring these Richard Petty lawnmowers.
Well, I'm sure Jody probably still has his name. If you don't, I have it, because Jay would call me so often and say, found another lawnmower, can I bring it down and have Richard sign it? So he'd put it in a trailer, and I forgot what part of Pennsylvania he lives in, and brings it down, you know.
Just take off from Pennsylvania and got to get his lawnmower signed.
Yeah, that's
oh
right.
my gosh. Yeah, we got to find this guy. This
Right.
is awesome. I didn't even know that the Richard Petty lawnmowers were a thing.
You didn't know, honey. You were too young for that. Yeah. Well, and then one of the things that they had for the fan club that they pick at me about is that when I did leave, I had this, you know, old office chair that it just fit me. You know, I didn't want one of these nice high back chairs. It was just a small office chair that had rollers. But one of the first years after I had retired in 2004, the fan club said, well, you know, where's Martha Jane's old office chair?
Mm.
Well, this man, they auctioned it off, and this man from Massachusetts bought that chair. I mean, you know, who would have wanted Martha Jane's office chair?
Did he ask
But
you to sign it? for him?
No.
Oh.
No. I didn't ever sign much of anything. No. But he also worked for Heinz Ketchup, and when the fan club would sell hot dogs here for the convention, that man would come and he'd say, you got Heinz ketchup? I'm not going to eat a hot dog if you don't have Heinz ketchup. So, you know, there was some fans like that that you really remember that meant a lot to you, that enjoyed coming to the conventions too.
Yeah, do you remember any fans that stick out in particular that were just, you know, cool stories, or really you got to know well through them being a fan of Richard?
There was lots of them. He was one too. And the first open house they had, and I wish I had looked up that date, that it was an open house, and Bill Frazier was the one that did the open house, and he was he had the business Success Promotion, and he did the first T-shirts that was really made here. And they did the open house on the lawn up at Mr. and Miss Petty's house. And there was, I can't tell you how many people that was here, but I know the line that was the line for Richard to sign everything. He sat on his mother and daddy's porch, and the line went almost out to the road that day. And then they had different vendors. Now, we have a file in there. I should have looked that up. That was about the first open house that they had. That nothing like that had ever happened in Level Cross. And they had, you know, different vendors and people selling souvenirs and things like that. So
yeah. My
that
dad
was
and my
quite
uncle
reading.
came down. My dad and my uncle and some other, I think it was just them. He'll tell me. He'll correct me. I
He
don't
knows
remember.
that.
But he came down from Virginia
really?
to one or two of those. Yeah, back in the 80s.
So talking about fans and the fan appreciation tour in '92, was that one of the hardest years for you having to work here, or was it just like any other year, or any stories about 1992?
Well, it was so different because there was so much for Richard to do at each racetrack, and then he still crawled in that car and raced, but there was just so many more appearances that he did during that time. And there again, how gracious he was. He took every employee to the last race at Atlanta.
Oh,
we would
cool.
like to have seen him do better, of course, but we rented buses and we all went down, and of course, stayed at the motel and all. So I had to make all those kind of arrangements too, and to make sure that everybody we sat in the stands. And to be honest with you, that was the first race I have ever sat in a stand. When we would go to the races with Lynn and Richard, we'd always stay in the infield, eat Miss Petty's fried chicken out of the back of the car. My responsibility was making deviled eggs and persimmon pudding. Miss Petty made fried chicken, and then Linda Gale would fix the turkey roast. So that was in the back of the day. But back to '92, we all had tickets, to sit in the stands. So we had to make that arrangement. That year was so different because he, had to concentrate on what was the fan appreciation tour, and also concentrate on, I'm getting in a race car, I would like to win a race, naturally,
Right.
And of course he didn't that year. But, for him to have ended his career in such a fabulous way for other people. There again, I just thought that was wonderful. And to have included the employees in his last time that he would crawl in a race car and actually race.
Yeah,
So,
That's pretty neat. I didn't realize that they brought everybody down there.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
we did.
But you got me off track thinking about the persimmon pudding over there.
Me
and,
too.
I'm curious. What do you have any specialties that you make, Martha Jane?
Persimmon pudding.
That'd be the one. Yeah.
But we have a tree that's been on our property for years and years, and this past year Willis squeezed out 51 packs of persimmon that we freeze, and it's 3 cups per pack. So you multiply that and see how many cups of persimmon he squeezed out.
So
When can we come get some?
right?
Oh, I should have brought you one today. Yeah.
So
yeah.
do you give Jody's mom, Rhonda, does she get her persimmons from you?
No, they have a tree right up here in Level Cross.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha,
yeah. Rhonda
gotcha.
has a tree that's on their property. They grow wild. If y'all are
Yeah.
familiar with persimmons,
Yeah.
they grow wild.
We need to have a cook-off because I know Rhonda Toombs, so Jody's mom, makes
Yeah.
my favorite persimmon pudding I've ever had. But I would like to try yours.
Well, you
so
let
we
me
should have a
know.
cook-off.
You let me know the next time y'all are going to be here, and I'll see that you get one. And back to '92, Alabama was the one that the music people that played at his last race at Atlanta. So we had a concert there that was located at another facility, not at the racetrack. And so 2 or 3 times Alabama would come here. So that was somebody else I got to meet,
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and they would come here to tape some of their music and film things. So that was interesting. So, he didn't end his '92 race career just with a race. He ended it with a celebration, is the way I looked at it. That the whole year had been a type of celebration, but yet that one last race was exciting too, even though he didn't completely finish.
Yeah.
But
So what were you doing? Because you retired in 2004. So what did you do from '92 to '04? What was that like? Was it different than when he was racing?
oh yes, but he was still in such demand.
Yeah.
Even though
He's still in such demand today.
he
I
is.
mean,
I mean, if you go in there and look at that calendar on the wall, do you see a day that there's not something written on it? Probably. Yes, he was still in demand, but in different situations, And then, you know, he was the county commissioner. So he still, you know, was in a little bit of politics. I was really glad he did not win Secretary of State when he won for that. I just didn't think he needed that was something on his plate at the time. He had enough to do. And, you know, being a Republican and the county Republicans thought that, you know, that was something he needed to do. And I didn't tell him not to run. You know, I wasn't about to do that, you know. When he come in, he said, I think I'm going to run for Secretary of State. And I said, okay, I guess tell me what I'm supposed to put on your calendar, you know.
Yeah.
So, but
You're kind of bracing yourself at that point, right?
Yeah. But I was just glad that wasn't something that he got into, you know. We won't get into politics, will we? No.
But Richard's never been shy about keeping things busy and staying active. I think if there's anything to take away from being around Richard Petty is that, you know, his longevity, I think you can attribute to the fact that he stays active and busy and involved with things.
100 miles an hour all the time.
He doesn't think he's old, y'all. I mean, you know, the man, of course, will be 84 come July. My husband and him are the same age. Willis still mows his yard, and I think he shouldn't do that, but that's another thing. But I still like to mow too, so you know we have his and hers lawnmower, so we do it together.
That's
but
awesome.
you know, Richard's never felt like he's old. He goes to this place in I'm gonna really tell something now.
Yes, let's go.
He goes to this place in Roanoke, Virginia, and he and Linda started going years ago. That it's a facility that they check everything. I mean, they have machines that can check your bones, your you know, your blood work and all of that, and you come out knowing, you know, if you have anything wrong. They would come back, and Linda would do the same thing, and she'd come in and she'd say, I can't believe it. They told him he's got a body of a 50-year-old man, and they found something wrong with me, you know, and he would be 65 or whatever when they started going, because he'd been going for years, and he'd come in and he'd say, I have a body of a 50-year-old man. Don't you think I look like that, you know? And I say, no, I know how old you are, you know. Yeah, so he has never had a mindset that he's the age he is.
Right.
He's just a young boy.
That's the key right there.
Yeah.
I can remember a couple of years ago, he came back. I think it was from one of those visits, because he still does them, right? And he came back. He'd walked in, and it was so crazy because he was wearing New Balance sneakers.
He wasn't wearing cowboy boots?
No.
Oh,
no,
man.
because I think, I could be wrong, but I believe they put him on a treadmill, you know, to walk or something. And so, like, he has, like, one pair of tennis shoes that he told me he had for quite some time. And he walked in, and he had a ball cap on. I don't know why he had the ball cap on. Maybe he didn't think that he could wear the cowboy hat without the cowboy boots. But
they didn't match, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Cowboy hat and sneakers do not match.
Yeah, and King's always going to match, right? He's not going to, he's got to be looking sharp. But, yeah, he came in wearing I could find the picture. I posted it to Petty's Garage Instagram back in 2017 or 18 or whatever. But, yeah, ball cap, sneakers. Only time I have ever seen him wear sneakers. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So, anything else that we missed? You know, what are you up to these days, and how do you spend your time most of the time?
Well, I'm very proud to say that we have a great grandbaby now.
Oh, boy.
Congratulations.
Yes, she was born in August, and she, of course, is the sweetest little girl that you could ever imagine having. You know, our granddaughter gave us to her in August. Her name is Charlotte Lottie Jane Davison. Now, you know, you stick that name on a little 4-pound baby and it's going to be Cap in it, but we call her Lottie, and that was from a family name. So now the granddaughter went back to work at home. She works for Texamark, and so she's working at home. So we get to have that little baby on Tuesday and Thursdays.
Oh,
now,
that's got to be fun.
I traded my day yesterday with the grandmother because I didn't want to miss keeping her 2 days, so I kept her yesterday. So that We have a big garden. Last year, Willis and we planted 49 tomato plants.
Oh,
so,
my goodness.
Yeah.
Gracious.
So, you know, one day when we picked tomatoes, we brought in 3 5-gallon buckets of tomatoes. I can a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. Can a lot. We just try to, you know, we don't think we're old either. We're just like Richard. So we still do our yard and do things like that. We have a place at Holden Beach that my mother and daddy moved down there in 61. And when she passed away in 97, she left the house to me. So we make some trips down there. Willis don't really like the beach, and I said, I'm so sorry that my mother didn't give us a place in the mountains since you like the mountains, but can't go back and do that, you know. I'll tell you one other thing I just now thought of was when John Andretti, bless his heart, I liked him better. Oh, maybe I better not say that.
But you like John Andretti, right?
Yes,
yeah.
I like John Andretti, and maybe I'll say he was my favorite. He was the most,
you can say that.
He was the most personable driver that Richard had.
You know, we had his son on the podcast. We had Jarrett on a couple weeks ago.
You know I don't watch these things.
Well, I'm just...
You know, somebody had to tell me what they were before I got here. So, you know, maybe my entertainment will change since I have done this, okay? I don't even do FaceTime, you know, so y'all are going to have to tell me, you know, how to do this. But John would always come in the office, no matter, you know, what time he was here or what he was doing. He would come in the office and greet you, sit down, have a conversation, just so nice. Well, there was a TV program called Food Fight. Are y'all familiar with that at all? It was on the food TV station.
I don't think so.
Years ago. Yeah, years ago. Well, they would have people on there that would be a contest that you would be against somebody, and you didn't know what you were going to fix until the day that you went, and they would uncover the main meat item.
Okay.
And then you would have to go to the grocery store, buy the items that you would go with this meat, and fix it in a certain length of time. They asked John to be on this program. And so then he said, well, Martha Jane, you know, would he be on it with me too? So we went to Charlotte, and one of the ladies at the marketing department went with us, Susan Williams, and we were on this TV show. But they uncovered a country ham.
Ooh.
Well, they did. Those ladies probably had never seen a country ham, you know. So we got in the car. John drove, went to the grocery store, picked out. We used sweet potatoes, apples, and I think carrots or something to go with them. We won the contest.
I would assume so. Yeah.
He cut the ham, and I stirred the apples. We put the apples on top of it, and then you had 3 people that would judge the food, and we won the contest. So that's one of the most exciting memories that I have of working here, too.
That's
that
a
just
great
involved
story.
myself.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
That's awesome.
But, you know, I feel so blessed, and y'all probably make me cry. But I feel so blessed that I had a job that I enjoyed so much and was around people that I loved and they showed me loved. You know, nowadays I don't think a lot of people that are working in an office situation can say that you're happy to go to work every day. And when I retired, my husband's parents both had died. His father was an invalid for a year that we took turns with his sister taking care of him, and he had passed away. And I just felt like it was time, you know, that for us to do something more than what we did together. And, of course, and then after the racing got so big and you'd go to the condos rather than going to the back of the car, we just stopped going because it just, you know, got to be somewhat more of a hassle. And but not that we didn't enjoy those first years of racing. It was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Racing was fun.
Definitely.
And my job was fun.
I think that's a great spot to end it there, Chris.
That's home run.
Definitely. Thank you, Martha Jane, for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Well, thank y'all for even asking me. I didn't think that about anything like this, but I've enjoyed it.
Good. That's good to hear.
Good.
All right. Well, that was the Martha Jane episode 12 of the RPM podcast presented by Petty's Garage. And let me, if that one doesn't do it for you, I'm not sure what else we can do, because that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that one lived up to the expectation for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, she's got more stories, knowledge, experience, and wit than most, and it certainly showed. And it really was great to get her on and hear about what it was like to be the executive assistant for Richard Petty, and the height of his, at the end of his career, height of fame and responsibilities, and a lot she had to handle for sure.
Yeah, and doing everything by hand.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Think of the sticky notes, Chris. How many sticky notes do you think Martha Jane has gone through in her career?
There ain't no telling. Yeah. But I tell you what, that's going to be a hard one to top.
Definitely.
That was a fun one. That was a really good one. In a way, my wife family went to school with her family. I don't know. They're all tied together, intermingled in there somehow. But man, everybody said she was going to be great, and did not disappoint whatsoever.
Definitely.
Awesome.
So hope everybody enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to all of our channels, and let us know what you thought of the episode. We really want to hear your feedback. Let's talk a little bit about racing for the moment. We just
let's talk about racing.
I know it comes with that reaction, but we just finished up Talladega, where I'm sure most of you tuned in and saw how that race went, and saw our strategy almost play out perfectly up until the last lap there.
Yeah.
But we don't really need to go into too much detail there. I just want to make sure I shout out our partners at the U.S. Air Force for it being their first race of the year, bringing the Tuskegee Airmen paint scheme that looked just awesome out there on track. I mean, that nose, it was so easy to spot in the pack because of the stripe pattern and the big Air Force logo on the hood. And so
and led some laps at the end too.
Let's say we made it up. I think we had a strategy and a plan in place, but kind of jokingly, kind of not, first goal was to make it past lap 14, which is, because we didn't in the 500, not of Eric's doing, but that was, honestly, I can say from atop the pit box, as soon as like lap 15, 16, 17 went up on the board, I could feel a little bit of a deep breath taken right there, because it's like, okay, we've made it a little bit further, and executed really well with staying out of the mess, but staying close enough to be within striking distance.
Yeah.
And, made it to the end of the second stage, and Jerry was like, okay, time to go. Let's get this thing done. And I thought we were poised for pretty spectacular finish there, but that's racing. I put out a tweet yesterday and just said, well, one thing's for sure, they knew we were here.
Yep. And I like that one. That was a good one. That was a clever one, Bradley. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah. It was a cool picture, though, because it's the 43 car out front in first place taking the green flag. And we're hoping more of that's in the near future. And
I think it is. Yeah. I'm pretty positive. With the dude behind the wheel and talking, and we were talking in this podcast, and I didn't want to interrupt Martha Jane, but she said that, Paul Newman came into the office.
Yeah. How crazy was that?
Right? Like, if I could meet a celebrity, he would be probably... Of any celebrities, I would want to meet Paul Newman, because he was a racer too.
Yeah.
But she said that he showed up in blue jeans in a denim jacket, and I was like, man, the last dude I saw in blue jeans with a denim jacket was Eric Jones.
So Eric Jones is Paul Newman 2.0.
Hopefully. I don't know. And I'll tell you what, though, I worked with Eric a couple times on some videos, and that dude, he's a good actor too. Now, I know Eric's not going to watch this, but the last time we recorded something, Eric,
you don't know. Actually, I got on the plane, not to cut you off, but I got on the plane.
No, Eric doesn't know what to do with his hands. He really doesn't.
He's going to listen to this.
I hope he does.
He's going to listen to this. He's going to be, he's going to be like, why'd you have to make fun of me, man? Come on. But I was going to say, I got on the plane to go to Talladega, and him and his girlfriend, Holly, they told me that they had just listened to the Jerry episode on their way to the airport. So,
oh, man.
Isn't that cool?
Well, what'd they say about it?
I said it was good.
It was good. It was good.
That's
okay.
good.
It was good. It was okay. It's all right.
You know.
Could be worse.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. But anyway, so moving on, going to Kansas this weekend. We've got a new partner We've got the Lonely Entrepreneurs, the nonprofit that we're going to be working with to promote their Black Entrepreneur Initiative on the 43 car. We've got 3 primaries coming up. It'll be Kansas, Circuit of the Americas, and Nashville. So look for that car. It's a great looking car, great cause, great people to be working with, and we're just the beginning of this partnership. So we're excited to be working with them and promoting that, and hoping to integrate it into some more partnerships in the future. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're rooting for Eric in that car this weekend. And another thing, we're not going to really give too much info on, but I will say I don't know when it's going to be released. So, but I'm not going to reveal it. I'll just say that we have decided upon a Darlington throwback.
Tell you what, and if you're a podcast listener, if this is your first one or your second one, there's some Easter eggs in past podcasts. Easter eggs. So just kind of go listen to all the other ones. See if you can figure it out.
You're gonna like it. Okay.
No, you're not gonna like it. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, I can't wait to share it with everybody. And that'll be after Kansas. So coming right up here on Throwback Weekend, which is of course one of everybody's favorite weekends. And gotta also point out that Eric Jones is a winner in the Cup Series at Darlington, and he doesn't necessarily have a favorite track, but anytime we talk about favorite tracks, I think Darlington rises pretty up high in that list. So he's looking forward to it. We're looking forward to it from a performance and from how the car is going to look standpoint. I think everybody's going to be jacked up.
I think he's figuring out how to drive that Chevy. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So other than that, I think we rolling to Kansas. Had a great episode with Martha Jane, of course. Got another one planned next week. Do you want to tell them who it is?
Oh, man, do I want to tell him who it is? I don't know. It's going to be a 2-parter, though. So the guy that we have coming in, legend, but he's never been on this property at Petty's Garage.
Which is wild to think of, and you'll understand why.
As competitors for as long as they were, the fact that he's never been here is kind of wild, but we're going to do a episode with him, and then we're going to bring in somebody we've already had on to sit down and have another hour-long episode. So we're essentially getting a 2 for next week. And
hopefully they're up for it.
Oh, man, I feel I'm going to sit there and just soak in and pinch myself the whole time.
We've got awesome. A little research to do, I think, before then, Chris.
A little?
Yeah, we got some studying up to do.
Golly, I have never felt more unprepared, but I'm going to tackle it. We are going to just get after it. That's what my old football coach used to say. Get after it. Well, we're going to get after it.
And dive in head first.
It's going to be. I think it's going to be a really, really good one, and I think people are going to be pretty stoked. But I don't know how we're going to top this. This was pretty solid.
Well, we say that every week, though, so feeling good. But like I said, hope everybody enjoyed the episode. Hope you're looking forward to some of the things we've got in the works here in the next couple weeks. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends if you like the show. Give it a suggestion. Word of mouth always helps. Leave a review. Comment on our social media stuff. We're everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Reddit. Everywhere. So come find us. Come interact with us. Let us know what you think. Submit your questions using hashtag AskRPM. Still keeping an eye out for those. So
I think that. To announce the next guest, you should post the person's picture maybe, and then have the people, hashtag AskRPM in the captions, in the comments. Excuse me, maybe, or do we just drop it on them? What do you think? Do we want to figure that out?
We'll figure that out.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. This is how we do things, people.
Yeah. And again, if you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rich Petty Motorsports Podcast.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.